Alright, and this is going to be the tutorial for DavePanel. So I just need to load up all of my scripts on screen, because I will forget stuff if I do not have a script to refer to. Alright, so DavePanels are capable of a lot. The essential thing DavePanels do is use dynamically allocated viewports. What this means is they only have a viewport when they're visible on screen. Because viewports always consume CPU, even when they're not visible, they are expensive when you have a lot of them. For levels with thousands of panels, this makes a large performance difference. Because that's difficult to modify without breaking, I've built a wide variety of functionality to DavePanels already, so that you probably will not need to change them. So they can already do everything that normal panels can. They can be transformed, they can have answers, they can have custom placeholders. They can disable length checking, and I do believe length checking also disables hint. You can, of course, have backgrounds. So white Dave, red Dave, and transparencies also work. You can make it so they don't make a sound on solution. Again, that's a default thing. And you can make it so that they swap with each other. And oops, I kind of forgot to set the sign in the panel or Z finding. So they can also destroy each other. Now, there is something a little bit notable about that. Is this screen... Okay, the screen is visible. So a little bit notable about destroy panel. So the normal destroy panel is implemented simply by moving the panel somewhere inaccessible. The same place for every destroy panel, actually. So DavePanel already has the ability to move itself anywhere. So you can simply make a self-destroying panel the way I did by simply setting it to warp somewhere inaccessible, like 1,000 units off the map. Now, Dave, of course, can also do achievements, and it can be an end one. This should open the credits. The credits have been rolled. And now I need to exit and re-enter the Lingo. I'll wait until you can see me again. Now, of course, you can't put these into the saving places, the point into the nodes where panels will be saved, because then it'll simply roll the credits every time you open the map. And switching Dave is a level switcher. I've just made this to switch to the same level. Apparently, I've made it to switch to level new, which is still showing my murder portals. Okay, so you can see that the level switching and the credit rolling technology works. A little bit embarrassing. I didn't think I had that set to that. They are also still capable of being placed under the groups. So, oh yes, the answer for this is nothing because I didn't set it. They also be capable of being placed under the U groups, so that this will be replaced with the save file's name. So the way you do that is by adding them to the text_U or the answer_U groups, and they will have their clue or answer changed to the save file name. This is default panel behavior. I've just made sure it's backwards compatible. And of course, you can have Dave panels are also proxies. So you can have one panel that has multiple answers because it's proxy to multiple panels. And you can have multiple panels that are proxied to the same single panel. So you have, you can access the same panel from multiple different points. They, of course, work with auto solvers. And they also work with visibility expressions right out of the box. They work with countdowns, as they should. And so, exactly the same as normal solve expressions. Now, I've already shown you moving panels, but this is just to show you can move somewhere where you can still see them, and that when you unsolve them, they go back. Now, this one actually moves you. So if I type in teledave, whoa! So it can optionally autocomplete the panel you removed to, which is why whoa-dave was already solved when I went around. So I'll just unsolve this and resolve this one so that you can see it's solving whoa-dave. The destination does not need to be a panel. It can be anything. However, I do have some warning. By default, it has relative offset turned on. So when I solve a teleportation, it's going to teleport me relative to the portal. In this case, I am now inside this box here. So be sure to set maximum warp distance that doesn't allow the player to snipe or position when solving, that allows them to get to unintended places, and there's now no way to get back from this except by returning the entry. So what happened there is that when I'm right up against this, it teleports me right up against Whoa Dave. If I were, yeah, let's do 2 blocks apart and jumped up. If I were 2 blocks apart and jumped up, oh, that was actually solved. Now I'm actually on this layer here, because I'm in the same place relative to Whoa Dave as I was to Teledave. When I back up this far, I'm actually capable of clipping into that cube. So of course all these Daves can be proxy panels, but there's a second thing going on here, which is that these are actually only 1, 2, 3, and a fourth, 4.5 panels. So I showed you before, at the very beginning here, but I kind of blitzed by it, that Dave can be reversed. This is actually more complex behavior than the reverse panel script that Chris made. So what I'm doing here is that I can set the top and the bottom panel separately. In particular, I can set the top or bottom independently to be the clue, the answer, blank, or blank with focus, which means you can still solve it. And all of these are also proxied to each other. So, all is Dave. So Dave panels also have font options. So you'll notice here I have changed the clue color. I've changed the case that I'm typing in. I've changed the color of the incorrect and correct text. And it's not case sensitive. So, oh, actually, in particular, what I've done here is I have forced it to lowercase, which I'm making sure that you can see it for a second before it forces it to lowercase. Spaces can count in answers. That's a toggle. Case-sensitive answers. So in this case, if I just type Dave Dave, it does not work. If I type Dave Dave, it does work. You wouldn't really want this for default fonts, but if you were doing something like making people solve answers in Wingdings, for example, where the uppercase is just a completely different part of the alphabet than the lowercase, it would be excellent. Daves can also set to be impossible to solve, or they can be set so that anything of the same length solves them. Now, I have also implemented something I call sniping hint, which is whenever you roll over it, it will activate, in this case, the sun warp indicator, because that's already built in, and therefore I don't have to provide an additional texture. And in fact, I have this as well for an invisible Dave here, so that you can see when you're sniping it, and like I said, a panel with both top and bottom set to blank is invisible. In this case, it's set to blank with focus, so that it still has collision when I mouse over it. So you can also set those in game. So if I go over Hint Dave here, Hint Dave now has a solving hint where it didn't used to before. And if I unsolve this will actually unsolve all of the related ones, unset the sniping hint. So now sniping hint is no longer set for Dave, or this Dave. And if I turn it back on, so I will be making a separate shorter video on the Dave sniping setter, which it's pretty intuitive to use, and it's made to be used, modified by other scripts, run from other scripts. It's meant to be easy to use, so you can use it as you need to for your design. Daves also have optional collision. You can turn the collision off by a simple toggle. Daves are also snappy by default. I can show you this in the editor right after this, but you can just set them, they are by default snappy, and if you want to, you can make them unsnappy. You just have to update them in editor afterwards, so that they form normal panels. They are snappy only in the sense that the meshes are offset, that they rotate nicely around corners, and that you can snap them to whole number coordinates, and they will be exactly where you need them to be, with a small Z offset so that the wall and the Dave panel are not Z fighting. I, of course, have also made Dave signs. So Dave signs can have backgrounds, they can have font options, they can be optionally collidable, they have a built-in scoreboard feature. You just click a single button and select a group of panels, or just leave it blank if you wanted to check every saved panel, and it'll automatically count the panels that you have solved. So if I boom, and now I have 42, meaning the life of the universe and everything. They are also snappy by default. Finally, one last thing, when you run it in the debugger, any Dave panel can be solved using the home key, which I just demonstrated there, but when I tap the home key, I can solve any panel. I can actually even solve impossible panels this way, but when I'm running it in-game, that is not the case. The home key will not work for that. All right, and okay, no, I still need to show you everything in-game. So let's go to... Yeah, let's go to one of these panels, and I'll walk you over all the options, which are now in a handy-dandy little collapsibles list here, because otherwise it's overwhelming. So these are all default text answer, update. Oh, update panel in editor is actually routine. It should unclick itself when you run it. And basically, Because this has no viewport, it will not never update. It just has a texture right now that's saved from a viewport. It will temporarily create a viewport. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I need to get back to this. Just a second. All right, I've gotten it working again. That was just a little bit embarrassing. So, basically, update viewport means as soon as I click this button, it should be updating the viewport to make sure that it has the new texture. Now, if you've done a lot of map editing, you've known that viewports will desync eventually when just running the editor anyways. This is the same problem. I can't really fix that, but I have made it slightly more stable than the default panels. So you'll need to reload your level less to see panels update. But hopefully you're modifying them to what you want shortly after you activate them anyways. The panel warping is for warping panels with each other, so replace on complete. Here's something I should note. I'm not going to show it. Replace on complete only happens when you complete the panel, which means if I complete a panel and it warps, I then unsolve it, it does not warp back. If I solve it again, it's still replacing with the same panel, and at that point it will warp back. But move to coords on completion will actually move on the unsolved as well. So you can replace on complete and move to coordinates on complete. It will first replace the other panel, and then it'll move to other coordinates. Then you can unsolve it, and it'll return to its replaced coordinates instead of the original coordinates. Solving it again will then replace them back, but also again move it to the specified absolute coordinates. So there's some clever things you can do with that if you really want to. That's why I made sure that these had different behaviors. Panel splitting, as I mentioned, blank, clue, answer, and blank with focus. Proxy, this is just the default proxy options. Now, I will have to do an additional video on how to do custom fonts. It is actually possible to get custom fonts working, so if I go to this one here, this ugly guy here, I don't think I would actually use this font. It's not very clear, but there is a way to get this font working in default Lingo. I'll have to make a separate video on that because it's a little bit of a process. So you can change the clue font and the input font separately. The clue font will always be the answer font as well. Here's the colors you change, and you can force uppercase, force lowercase, or allow mixed for both the clue and the input separately. Spaces can count an answer, and if you have mixed case enabled, you can enable case-sensitive answers. Under the panel MISC, we have a number of things. We have enable checking, which is the normal length checker. Achieve text, you put something here if you want an achievement to show up on screen. The solve sound is, again, if saved, always never. The background material as default collision is toggleable. I showed you that before. Sniping hint is toggleable, but you can also have sniping toggle layers. So let's go over here to, I have the sniping setter right down here. So the sniping setter will take these, take a bit mask here, and basically every panel that has one set, or 1 in 3 set if I set it like this, would have its, that's not the Dave panel, that's the Dave sign. Everything that has the one set here in the sniping toggle layers would, when the associated panel to Dave's sniping setter is set, it would activate its sniping hint, and when it's unsolved, it would deactivate its sniping hint. There are other possibilities that are already coded into Dave's sniping setter that I just haven't enabled by default. I figure anyone who's doing that probably wants a more custom approach that suits exactly what they're doing. But these toggle layers are built in by default, so you can choose which groups of panels will be affected. Panel solve mode, normal and possible, and any answer of same length. Snappy, which I said is on by default. So if I do that, you'll see this just popped out, and if I look at its transform all the way down here, you can now see, well, first of all, I no longer need that to be offset, and I know, and this can now just be, nope, that's the wrong one. How far back do I need it? Oh, I need it to be negative 18.5, don't I? I do, yeah. So now this is just whole numbers, or almost 0.5 numbers at the very least, and yet it's still showing with no Z fighting. And when I try to rotate it, let's move it forward. When I try to rotate it, it will rotate not along the middle of the sign, but along the edges of, but along the center of the sign, which you'll notice is back here. So if I do this to this panel, which okay, let's move this out of my way. If I do that to this panel, if I rotate it, you'll notice that it rotates around around the center of the sign. So if I want it to now be on the center of the wall, I now also have to change its location again. So This is also just a panel that has been made invisible. I was going through all the options. Sorry. I am destructible. So that's panel misc for you with the sniping layers and everything. Unsolve self after completion. When you click this, a panel will automatically unsolve itself. This is useful for panels that are used to trigger, elevators or warps or other things, and you want the player to realize that they can be unsolved immediately, and that you don't want to actually save their state. You just want the player to be able to use them switches. Player warping. So you can select a thing to warp to, and relative warp is on by default. So if I go over to this teledave, you can see its relative offset and that it's warping to panel 43. If you turn off relative offset here, then it'll simply move you to the coordinates of panel 43 with this offset added to it. It will actually add this offset either way. Maximum distance and rotate offset should be hopefully very intuitive, and solve destination panel on complete. And this is, of course, the normal credits and level switching menu that have been added on to DavePanel. So that is your brief introduction to DavePanel.